have the pleasure of introducing Nuala Doherty. Nuala is a Jackson Heights activist and community organizer. She is president of the Jackson Heights Beautification Group and an active voice in Amplify Her, an organization devoted to amplifying the voices of women candidates for elected office in New York. One of our members described Nuala as Jackson Heights Superwoman because if someone in the community needs help, she is the first one there organizing a help brigade. And if someone has an idea for a community building group or action, Nuala will help make it a reality. So I'll hand the floor over to her.
What they didn't say is that I'm only 4'10". All right. This room is Jackson Heights. This room, look to your left, look to your right. The diversity in this room is the diversity of Jackson Heights. The diversity that makes this the fabulous community that we all enjoy. And it's that diversity that makes this issue so important to the people here in Jackson Heights. With the election of our latest president, I think the whole neighborhood felt this pall, this idea that you couldn't get out of bed the next morning, this idea that kind of ripped at the fabric of our souls. And the question is how do you get up? How do you rise and how do you resist? And the answer is each and every one of us has to do each and everything that we possibly can. I noticed that in the envelope, they had a wonderful page of just about thinking about your qualities and how you can use your strengths to support our immigrant neighbors. I, like many people in this room, am the firstborn American in my family. They used to tease me as a child that my older brothers and sisters couldn't be president, but I could be, because I was actually born here. But like many families here in Jackson Heights, my family took a voyage. They started in one country, looked for jobs in another, and ended up, bizarrely enough, in rural Indiana for employment opportunities. And then we escaped and came here to New York. And so seeing those two disparate places, a place like rural Indiana, a very red state, where there's this idea of sameness and the importance of sameness, and then coming to a neighborhood like Jackson Heights and seeing the neighborhood embrace this idea of difference. And I think that is the key. We must not only enjoy it, but embrace it. And now that it's under attack, we must fight for it. We must fight for it with every fiber of our being. And how do we do that? I think as individuals, the best thing we can do is be the shield. We have vulnerable immigrant neighbors, vulnerable immigrant family members, vulnerable people that we don't know so well but run into, and they must know that there are people like us who stand with them, behind them, and will support them. So, does it mean that you go to an immigration hearing and just sit there with a family member while they spend hours and hours sitting on an uncomfortable chair, kind of like this, so nervous that they can't eat or sleep the night before, knowing that there's a friend there with them? When an immigrant neighbor knows that a month from now they have to go check in with immigration. Think about that. Can you imagine sleeping at night knowing that a month from now you have to check in, right? They don't know that a month from now they might not come home. They might not be able to bring their kid to second grade the day after that check-in. They might not be able to pay rent with their wife and children the day after that check-in. They have no certainty of their future in the life we live today. So we, as friends, neighbors, and a community, must show them our support. We must show them that we are there for them no matter what. And then even on the trickier ones, and when I say trickier ones, this is when we get into the fight of the good immigrant versus the bad immigrant, right? So, this was a good immigrant, they never did anything wrong, and they're being deported, versus someone who did something wrong. They do have a criminal conviction, they did do something. They need our support as well. life is such that people make many mistakes. We've all made mistakes. And just because someone made a mistake doesn't mean they deserve to lose their family, their job, the community they know, to be sent back to a country they voluntarily left and may not have been for years and years. So I want to make sure that we not only do we support immigrants, but we support all immigrants, no matter what their situation and their background. And that makes it a little harder sometimes, right? Sometimes you hear groups say, oh, well, they were a good immigrant, right? They never did anything wrong. Versus, oh, well, I heard he had a criminal conviction. Or I heard he did something wrong. We have to stand for the idea that if a person came and made a life here, they are our neighbors. They are our community, and we must support them. The next question is how we do that. And the answer is right here. This is step one. You're all here. And that is to educate yourself. And one of the things that I think is really important to educate yourself with is the fact that these draconian laws you hear being enforced by the current administration, the current administration hasn't changed any of those laws. Those were the laws that have been on the books for years, many of them going back to 1986 and Ronald Reagan. These are laws that we accepted decade after decade, but since they weren't enforced or we didn't hear about them, we thought they were okay, and we never changed them. And we have to look going forward, saying, how did we let that happen? How did these draconian laws that says if you make a mistake, there's a 10-year bar, that you have to be separated from your family for 10 years, that you can have almost no criminal convictions at all and be allowed to stay here. The fact that bail can just be denied, right? A person can take away their liberty. You can keep them away from their family. You can incarcerate them for months, if not years, waiting for an immigration hearing without the right to a lawyer and without the right to bail, right? If any of us went to the corner store and stole a lollipop and we were arrested, we would have a right to a lawyer, right? We would never let a person go before a judge without a lawyer. Yet our immigrant neighbors have no such rights. How is that possible? So when you think about how we do this, we must go back and question, how did we get here? How did these laws that were so harsh and draconian, how did we let them stay on the books? And how do we change them? And then, how do we protect each and every one of our neighbors, right? No matter their background, if they are in our community, we support them and we shield them and we will fight for them. And it's that showing of love and support and that idea that I've got my community behind me is the best thing we can do for these immigrants who are in this precarious spot day after day after day. All right? Now, they don't have to necessarily be in immigration proceedings. They could just know that they're not here legally and they have that fear in their head when they walk their kid to school, they go to a government appointment. So they must know that we're behind them as a community and they are a strength in numbers. So you being here shows that, and we must make sure that all of our immigrant neighbors know that. So you're going to learn so much tonight, but we must bring that back to the community to show that we support them and we're behind them. Thank you.